Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft, producer for the Experience of the Soul podcast channel, with just a quick programming note. We will be posting part 2 of Process Addiction in just a few weeks, but due to the recent and tragic gun violence at Ross Elementary, Dr. Bevan-Lee thought it would be best to address that right away. Welcome to Healing Your Family Legacy, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 69. Here we are, again. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
And this is Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, helping you heal your family legacy. Well, here we are again. The last episode was on the Supreme Court, the leak to overturn Roe v. Wade. I talked a lot about that. And I was going to get right back to process addictions today. But no. I was thinking about this yesterday. Okay, now, how am I going to get back to process addictions and not sound strange because I was just talking about Roe v. Wade? And then, while I was thinking about that, the news came on about the latest school shooting. And I thought, I can't just go, okay, we're going to talk about process addictions today because there's been another disaster, another slaughtering of little children in their classrooms, and I just can't let that go. But today I want to talk about trauma, because that's what this has been all about. We're all traumatized. Anyone that has a heart and a soul is traumatized today by finding out about yet another school shooting of little kids who are 2nd to 4th graders. And, all the children that died, it's just too awful to even find a word for. But there are all the other children who didn't die. This is going to mark their childhood. They are traumatized. And what are we going to do to help those children? What are we going to do? Last night, I didn't go down the rabbit hole because I thought, okay, here's the facts and, here it is. And I need to get my sleep because tomorrow I have couple of important items to take care of. So, but I did watch Steve Kerr, who is the coach for the Golden State Warriors. And if you didn't see him talk, you should grab it because he pretty much said what I was feeling, and that is what needs to happen. What needs to happen when yet 19 more little children are completely annihilated, slaughtered by an obviously mentally ill young man. And I say obvious because I watched the news this morning and I listened to the police chief that was being interviewed, and he was good. He just gave the facts. And what he said was that his boy lived with his grandparents and he shot his grandmother before he made it to the school. And the grandmother, who at the time of this taping was clinging to life. But that right there tells you that this young man had serious trauma. He's being raised by his grandparents. Now, being raised by grandparents all by itself isn't trauma. Grandparents are great. I know I am one. And my little, almost 2-year-old grandson loves it every time he sees me on the FaceTime and in person. He loves me and I love him. And, there's no trauma there. Okay. The trauma is that if the grandparents are raising the child, then the child's parents are gone. And I don't know where they went. I don't know where they are. Probably that will come out later. But remember, I've talked a lot about you are a child. If you don't feel safe in your environment for whatever reason, that is trauma, and it impacts the development of the child's brain. This 18-year-old boy just turned 18, and he went to the gun store and bought what I think is a weapon of mass destruction for his 18th birthday present, and went out and killed a bunch of kids, shot his grandmother, and killed 2 adults who were at the school. Oh, and by the way, let me just remind everybody that, for all of those people who think, well, just put armed guards around the school. There were armed officers at that school. And it didn't help one bit, because they don't have AR-15s, and God forbid we start arming people around schools with weapons of mass destruction to keep the kids safe. What insanity is that? That's what, people at prisons who are armed, you see them up in the lookout towers of prisons. They don't have ARs. So we're going to give, is that what we have to do here? Because most of the shooters, I know in the one in Sandy Hook, was a young man. His brain wasn't completely formed yet. Just like this 18-year-old, his brain wasn't completely formed yet. We don't even let them drink alcohol until they're 21, and they're still not making good decisions. Walk into any frat house on a college campus, there are a lot of 20 to 25-year-olds in those. They don't make good decisions. So we don't let them drink alcohol, but we let them buy weapons of mass destruction with a brain that is so traumatized, their frontal lobe isn't developed yet, and when it does get developed, there's going to be a lot of holes in that brain, a lot of really important connections that aren't made because of the trauma. I don't know, like I said, I don't know this boy's, and I'm calling him a boy, he just turned 18, for crying out loud. Anybody over the age of 40 is calling an 18-year-old a boy, because they are. So I don't know what all happened to this young man, this boy, but I will tell you right now, he's seriously traumatized. And those children who survived are seriously traumatized, and that whole town is traumatized. Ask Littleton, Colorado. Do they ever get over it? No, they don't get over it. There have been suicides from the kids who were not killed in Littleton. Dylan Klebold, his mother, wrote a book about what it was like for her to be the mother of someone who goes in and annihilates children in a school, and how horrible it was. And I talked a little bit about this before, but his trauma was secret. He felt like an outsider at school. He was bullied. So I am 71 years old. I'll be 72 this year. And I grew up in the West. I'm a daughter of the Golden West. Okay? My dad was a real cowboy, not a fake one, not an urban cowboy, but a real cowboy on real ranches. And we ended up, he was able to buy a cattle ranch. And, he was a rodeo cowboy. My brother was a rodeo cowboy. My brother still rides horses, and, every spring we know that we're going to have some kind of event that's happened because he hasn't been on a horse in a while. But that's another story. So we grew up, my point is that we grew up with guns. We were cowboys. My dad taught me how to shoot a rifle. He taught me how to shoot a handgun. We had them. It was part of our lives. I mean, we hunted. My dad was a deer hunter. We all went. And while we'd sit at the campground with our little red sweatshirts on, my dad would take one or all of us with him when he was out walking around the mountains looking for deer. And, he always got one. I don't ever remember him not getting one. And we took it back and we ate the deer. It was a food issue, not a sport issue. Okay? Us kids, we grew up with guns. And we had trauma. Okay? That, if you ever read my book, Iron Legacy, you'll know that I had serious trauma as a child. I got help for it. Because my brain went to, I don't understand this. I really need to understand why these things happen to me. And so instead of going into law enforcement, which, law enforcement's another profession that has a lot of traumatized people in it. And they went into the profession to find out, not to find out why it happened, but to make sure it doesn't happen again. I went into the profession that went, why? Because we have a lot of traumatized people in my profession, and we wanted to know why. Okay? But here's the deal. It's like when we were kids on a playground or sitting in our classrooms, it never occurred to us that we were in danger. We had fights. There were fights on the playground. There was fights when I was in high school out in the parking lot between different groups of people, between two, In fact, when I was in the 9th grade, a girl that, was really mad at me that day, whose name was also Donna, which was kind of weird. We were the only two in the school. But, she got mad at me and walked up to my locker. And when I turned around, she decked me. And today, I'm really happy that she couldn't go out and buy an AR. I might have been dead. Because guess what? She had a 9th grade mind. I think we're about 14 or 15 then. Our frontal lobe is not formed. All those connections have not been made. She had trauma in her life as a child and as a teenager that made it so that when I called a foul on her in gym class playing basketball, she was humiliated, and it triggered her in some way so that she had wanted to go and get the person that shamed her. She felt ashamed by having a foul called on her in basketball. And that was it. I could have been dead today. I could have been dead, not even sitting here as a 14-year-old if we had the kind of access to guns that this boy had. I grew up during the Vietnam era. I was in college then. And, we saw the carnage of the war on TV almost every day. For anybody that cares, the Kent State massacre, when the military opened up on protesters against the war, was on the Newsweek magazine cover. The young woman who's holding her friend's head in her arms. And they didn't like black that out. It was right there. And I really believe, and I know that I'm not going to take this belief myself, all to myself, but Dave has the same belief that, we saw that carnage every day, and that's part of the reason that war ended. We got out. Because the people in this country saw it on their TV every day. It wasn't fuzzed out or blacked out. We saw it. We saw those heads exploding. We saw My Lai. We saw the horror of what those kind of weapons can do to people, to individuals. We don't see it now. We don't want to be upset by anything. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm upset now. I'm tired of not only school shootings where, these children are massacred, and it's on the nightly news and the morning news, and everybody's got their prayers and thoughts. I'm with Steve Kerr. They don't need our prayers and thoughts. They need us to act like adults. Functional adults. Let's review. What does a functional adult act like? Well, functional adults they know themselves. They know who they are. They seek facts. They seek the facts so that they can make good decisions. Oh, they make decisions with their brain based on facts. They participate in life. They take care of themselves. They eat right. They don't drink too much. They don't, it's like a functional adult act their age. And when you see a senator this morning talk about, well, I can see that armed officers, really, it works. It's shown that having armed officers at schools work. This guy is a senator from Texas where there was just 19 children massacred with armed officers standing outside, and they couldn't do anything because this 18-year-old had a weapon of mass destruction against their pistols. They didn't, and they were shot. He was getting into that school no matter what. I don't know what his trouble was. I don't know. Obviously, he was troubled. And another thing that Steve Kerr said is that we are hostage to 50 senators who will not pass laws to make it illegal to just walk in and buy a gun without some kind of background check. If you show up as having mental illness or having been hospitalized for mental illness, or you're a felon, or, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. You're not responsible enough. For all we know, this young boy was mentally ill and hearing voices to tell him to go shoot those kids for their own good. You don't know. But I can tell you this. His brain wasn't formed. His frontal lobe wasn't done yet. And those really important connections had not been made. And he was a boy. A really upset and distressed boy. I did hear one person, and, this wasn't from the police, so I don't know how factual it was, but it wouldn't surprise me. She is a woman who was there, at one of the people in the town, and they asked her if she knew him, and she said yes, and that he'd always been a bully. I talked about bullies before. Bullies are acting out the unresolved emotions of what's happening to them. That's all. Yeah, you're not born a bully. You're not born a bully. It happens to you because of trauma. You probably think that I sound like a broken record. Trauma, childhood trauma that is not handled appropriately, creates mentally ill people. They either become addicts or they get mentally ill. They have mental illness. Depression and anxiety is mental illness. Now, there are some brain disorders that occur for whatever reason we don't know, where, it's probably not about feeling unsafe in your family, but it most likely is. And now we know that these events in children's lives cause mental illness and addiction. And I want to reach out to everybody who might be listening to this podcast and say that if you have a mental illness or an addiction, there's got to be help for you. I know that it might be hard to find. I know that it might be expensive. But if you're an addict, you can walk into a 12-step meeting today or get online and go to meetings all day long if you want to, today, and that those 12-step programs work. You might not agree with, that in the big book it just says he or him, or refers to God and not goddess, or, that kind of triggered me when I first went. But, it's like, get over it. We're looking for a way for you to be able to show up for yourself so that you could take care of business. A 12-step program doesn't need to be, taken apart to make sure we're using the right pronouns. It's about saving people's lives from addiction. And the rules are simple. You stop putting it in your mouth or your vein or up your nose or whatever you're doing addictively. You're not using internet pornography to escape unresolved trauma. You got to stop the behavior first. You must stop the behavior first. Nothing will help you unless you stop that behavior. Now, for those of you who don't have addictions and you do have mental illness, you can call the National Institute of Mental Health. There are, phone books are things that you may not even know about, but you can get online and look under help for mentally ill. There is help available. It might be hard to find, but it is available. Don't go out and buy an AR and walk into a school and start shooting people. Or how about don't go buy an AR and walk into a grocery store and start shooting people. Since I saw you last, there have been 2 mass shootings. What is going on? I know it's crazy out there. I know every day we're dealing with climate change, fires, floods, hurricanes that are out of control. I know we're dealing with a war in Ukraine. I know that we're dealing with, rising prices and supply chain issues, and we're dealing with mass shootings. It's so easy to go down the rabbit hole of what is happening to us. I don't know. I don't even pretend to know. What I do know and what I do to deal with this every day so that I can do what adults do. Self-care. Knowing. Gathering facts. making decisions based on your brain, is that I need to know that I have to do those things so that I can get a good night's sleep. Have you ever tried to make good decisions without a good night's sleep? They're not going to be good decisions. So I'm asking you, if you're listening, please do good self-care through this. Make good decisions. And I'm just making a plea that if you care about these children that can get ARs and go out and shoot other kids, or a mad, angry person who can go out and get an AR and shoot people in a grocery store because they don't like the color of their skin. If you care about this, contact your senators and say, get these laws passed. And there are some other laws that I'm going to be talking about in my next session. And those are the mental health laws and the mental health system that continues to fail. So until then, please take care of yourself. Do self-care. Don't go down the rabbit hole. You need the facts about what's going on, but you don't need to be listening to it and watching it day and night. It's too distressful. Your brain is on fire and you won't be able to do good self-care, which means you're not going to be able to act your age and you make bad decisions. And so until then, please take care of yourself.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Your Family Legacy here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. Healing Your Family Legacy is copyright 2022, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The Soulworks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. Soulworks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the Soulworks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.